Auckland Tourism, Events and Economic Development is the region's economic development agency, helping to make Auckland a desirable place to live, work, visit, invest and do business.
E ngā mana, e ngā reo, tēnā tātou katoa. Good morning. It's great to see such a fantastic and diverse turnout. Too often, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we end up talking to people like us. But we can't realize the full potential of diversity and inclusion until we have everyone in the room and until we listen to everyone. So thank you for coming. Diversity is about acknowledging that each individual is unique. It's about recognizing those differences, which could be along the lines of gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, physical ability, age, socioeconomic background, beliefs, education, and so on. The typical approach to diversity, though, is to look at the growth in the number of people we have in each of our diversity boxes. So if you are one of those organizations, come and talk to me afterwards. As a young brown woman, I offer you a 3-for-1 deal. When I was appointed New Zealand Trade Commissioner to Singapore about 10 years ago, I was the youngest, the only Indian, a migrant from the Pacific, and one of the few women. As I was leaving, one of my colleagues said to me that our team's diversity stats would suffer greatly with my departure. The same colleague had earlier told me that had I identified with the rainbow community and had a disability, I would have been a better poster child for diversity. We are in such a hurry to put people into boxes. We miss the intersectionality that arises from the multiple forms of diversity that they represent. Our other problem is that too often we view diversity from the lens of them and us, them being minorities. But as soon as you label a group them or they, you are excluding them. You are emphasizing their otherness. They isn't us. In any case, diversity is situation dependent. Each one of us can represent diversity in some situations and not in others. But we need all of us for diversity to exist. So why does all of this matter? Aside from the moral standpoint, research after research tells us that organizations which embrace diversity and inclusion outperform their peers. On the screen, you can see just some of the results of how these organizations outperform. Diversity drives creativity, innovation, and empathy. It drives productivity and profitability. Diversity leads to better decision-making, and it's a great defense against groupthink. At the board level, gender-diverse boards perform better. Diversity delivers better customer orientation and potentially opens up new markets for businesses, giving them the strength to pursue these in an informed manner. Diverse and inclusive organizations have greater employer brands, critical during a skills shortage. Shareholders and customers are starting to vote with their wallets, requiring organizations to embrace diversity and inclusion before they support them. So all of this is well and good, but this is all international data, of course. So why should we care in New Zealand? To give you just a few reasons, New Zealand is now home to more than 213 ethnicities and 160 languages. Imagine having customers who don't speak English well or at all. Are you going to exclude them? Or are you going to ensure that your team has the ability to engage with them? 1 in every 4 New Zealand residents was born overseas. Here in Auckland, that figure jumps up to 44%. Consider having staff who come from countries where the business practices are very different from ours? Will you invest in them? And are you open to learn from them? Almost half of Auckland's population is Maori, Pacifica, and Asian. Are your recruitment, retention, and promotion practices sensitive to these cultures? In terms of physical ability, a quarter of our population identifies with accessibility needs. Are you meeting these needs? Workplaces don't exist in isolation. They exist within our society. And when society is changing so rapidly, organizations that ignore these trends do so at their peril. Legislation to prevent discrimination has been in force for many years. But with growing diversity, we are seeing growing discrimination. The Me Too movement is one example, but there are many others. I sit on the advisory board of New Zealand Asian Leaders, and too often I hear from members who have had to change or are considering changing their names simply to secure a job interview. If you're a mother, then you will know that there are many times when your commitment to your organization has been questioned. Motherhood brings many skills that are useful in the workplace: organization, negotiation, budgeting, coaching, multitasking. It's not that others can't bring these skills, but that mothers are penalized for taking time off to care for their children. Women's salaries and likelihood of promotion fall when they become mothers. But pay bias doesn't affect fathers. In fact, fathers make more money than their male counterparts who don't have children. So, how do we manage the challenges and opportunities that diversity provides? Well, we become inclusive. Inclusion is about involvement, empowerment, and belonging. It is when we recognize the dignity of all people. Diversity is who we have. Inclusion is what we do to ensure all people are respected and valued. According to Diversity Works' New Zealand Workplace Survey, the top 5 diversity issues for New Zealand businesses are well-being, gender, bias, flexibility, and ethnicity. For this next half of my presentation, I want to talk through some of the strategies which you can apply in your workplace that can help you deal with these and other issues. Firstly, start from the top. Leaders need to articulate commitment to diversity and inclusion. They need to role model appropriate behaviors and call out those which are unacceptable. At the heart of diversity and inclusion is organizational culture, and leaders set the tone for that. Unspoken rules about leaders' likes and dislikes can have much greater impact than formal policies. Inclusive leadership is about self-awareness, about a willingness to listen and learn. As Simon said, diversity means different things to different people. And so the diversity and inclusion initiatives that you come up with in your organization will be different from what someone else comes up with. So start by defining what diversity means to your people. The strategy needs to focus on your purpose as a business, your staff and stakeholders. Look at what your data is telling you about your workforce and where you need to focus your energies. Research tells us that millennial men have among the lowest inclusion scores in most workplaces. So if that's the case for you, think about what you can do for them. Have an action plan which is well-resourced and measured. Many businesses claim that they seek to maximize diversity, but a lot of their systems promote similarity. Recruitment practices, for example, suggest hiring candidates from historically reliable sources. Candidate selection is based on what's worked in the past, so insisting on 9 to 5, for example, when flexibility would work just fine. Ask any migrant, and they will tell you that one of the main reasons that recruiters give them for declining their applications is that they have no New Zealand experience. We need to get better at recognizing international experience. Cultural understanding is also critical. Western cultural values expect candidates to maintain eye contact and volunteer information during interviews. But in some other cultures, like Pacific Island cultures, for example, maintaining eye contact is a sign of disrespect. Standardized practices, such as blinding CVs and using objective performance measurement metrics, can have a great impact. But if the teams developing these systems are not careful, they can be institutionalizing their own biases. And even before the shortlisting stage, the way in which job ads are written can attract or turn off diverse candidates, not because they don't have the skills to do the job, but because of cues telling them that they are not welcome. Diversity attracts diversity. So have a look at the photos and videos on your website and your social channels. What do they say about you as an organization? And for every candidate sitting here who has ever self-excluded themselves from a role because of your diversity, remember you lose 100% of the race you don't start. So dare to compete. But bias is real. A female CEO told me about a Pacific Island mother of 4 who was, being considered for promotion in her company. The mostly male leadership team questioned her desire and commitment to step up, especially given she'd recently had a child. The CEO, however, felt that given the woman's personal and cultural values and a strong support network, she would succeed. She was right. We all have biases. Often these stem from a place of fear, a fear of being displaced somehow, a fear of the unknown. So challenge yourself and challenge others when you see bias in action. Research shows that when people are confronted about their bias, they react with anger and irritation. I don't think we'd need research to find that out, but anyway, it's there. While such interactions may be unpleasant, they have been proven to lead to behavior change. Inclusive organizations listen to and learn from their people. Actively ask your staff for feedback. And you can do that through staff surveys or focus groups. Use exit interviews to find out why people are leaving and what you may need to change. A high-achieving Maori woman once told me about her early experience on boards. One of her board chairs would go around the table and ask for the views of all the male members around the table, but completely ignore her. The board metrics would have shown a Maori woman on that board, but her skills, knowledge, and experience were completely ignored. Getting people to the table is great, but you need to empower them to speak, and you need to have the courage to listen to them. Different opinions spark innovation. And this doesn't just apply to the board table or leadership tables. It applies to our everyday team meetings. Flexible work arrangements help to improve staff engagement, and they help in achieving gender parity. These can include things like flexi-time, working remotely, part-time, creative ways in which work is bundled and assigned. But we need to reduce the stigma associated with non-standard work practices. And we need to ensure that people who are on flexible arrangements get access to the same training, development, and promotion opportunities as other staff. But there are other things that you can do as well. Offer mentoring and coaching. Encourage leaders to sponsor staff, even better if they sponsor someone who's not in their image. It's often said, we can't be what we can't see. So highlight role models. Workplace networks provide a safe space for staff to seek support and share experiences. They're also a great way to build a pipeline of talent. The Ministry of Justice Women's Support Network has more than 730 members throughout the country. They provide educational and inspirational events, as well as access to development opportunities to their members, which includes all genders. The network was clear that women's empowerment cannot be achieved without men being part of the conversation. For many women who need to take time off work at some point in their careers, workplaces that have support networks before they leave are a much better place to support their re-entry when they return to work. A safe and inclusive environment requires us to be respectful of colleagues, customers, and other stakeholders. So review your policies to ensure they are inclusive. Leave policies, for example, should be gender neutral and not promote childcare as a mother-only responsibility. Inclusion scores are 45% higher for businesses that are seen to have fair and transparent practices when it comes to pay, performance management, and promotion. Are your practices fair and transparent? Deal with bullying and harassment, and provide training to staff on sensitive issues. The New Zealand Defence Force found that its sexual ethics and responsible relating workshops were quite useful in helping staff to have brave conversations and on focusing on providing a safe environment free from harmful and inappropriate behavior. Ensure your workplace meets accessibility needs. But often it's not the big one-off gestures or programs, but the small actions on a day-to-day basis that speak the loudest. Morning teas that cater for the needs of all team members and not just the dominant group. Team building activities which take into account everyone's ability. Staff not being made to feel guilty for wanting flexible arrangements. If there's only one thing you do after today, get to know people who are different from you. When we have friends who are different from us, we are much more open to diversity in our workplaces. That picture on the screen is from my children's school. After the Christchurch terrorist attack, the children organized a Mufti Day to raise funds for the victims and their families. This is the whole school marking the occasion, with their multicultural kapahaka group in the center. For these children, diversity is a normal part of their lives. It is who they are, all of them. There is no them and us. The secret to making diversity work is to have an inclusive culture. A culture where all people feel respected and valued. Diversity and inclusion cannot be a one-off initiative. It requires strong, sustained, and inclusive leadership. Businesses play a critical role in building an inclusive society. It's not an easy task, but peace, prosperity, and advancement depend on it. He aha te mea nui o te ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is really about the people. They are your greatest asset. They are the greatest thing. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you.
Auckland Tourism, Events and Economic Development is the region's economic development agency, helping to make Auckland a desirable place to live, work, visit, invest and do business.